Hello, and welcome to the LIS Recap. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. The Stones are at an airport in Jamaica, awaiting their flight back to New York because of a booking overload. Some passengers will have to transfer to Flight 828, which will depart a little later. Michaela, a police detective, her brother Ben, and their leukemic son Cal decide to fly on Flight 828 while the rest of the family returns home early. The trio is already on Flight 828 and waiting to land in the following scene. A storm appears out of nowhere, causing the plane to experience severe turbulence. The lights go out and the emergency lights come on, causing everyone to panic. Everything returns to normal after a minute, and they continue on their way to JFK. However, the pilot is instructed to descend to another airport. When the operator on the other end hears the name of Flight 828, he becomes nervous. The pilots are told that military and medical personnel will be waiting for them when they land. They land the plane, still perplexed. Vance, the director of the NSA, is the primary investigator on the scene. He informs the perplexed passengers that they took off from Jamaica on April 7, 2013, but that the current date is November 4, 2018. For the past 5.5 years, everyone on the flight has been missing and presumed dead. The scene then shifts back to the day they were at the airport. Michaela, the daughter, works as a detective for the New York Police Department. She looks at her family and realizes how stressed they are despite their happy faces. Ben and Grace, her brother's wife, have been married for 15 years and are still in love. Cal and Olive, their twins, are their only children. Cal was diagnosed with leukemia at birth and has been given 6 months to live. Ben and Grace are constantly concerned about their son, desperately trying to find a way to save him. Then there's Michaela's mother, who wants her to take the next step in her life and marry. Jared, Michaela's long-term boyfriend, recently proposed to her. She is taking her time responding to him because she is still recovering from the trauma of a recent event. Back in the present, the passengers believe Vance is making a sick joke, but they quickly realize he is not. Further investigation reveals that the passengers have not aged a day since their departure. The NSA agents are expecting a response from the passengers, but they are as clueless as everyone else. They are held in a camp for the rest of the night and individually interrogated. All of their responses are the same. They have no idea what happened. 36 hours later, the news is broadcast around the world, causing a sensation. The passengers' families rush to the airport to be reunited with loved ones they thought had died a long time ago. It's an incredible experience for both passengers and their families. Ben reunites with his now teenage daughter. Cal is astounded to discover that his twin has grown to be twice his height. Grace, on the other hand, is overjoyed to have them back. Ben and Michaela, on the other hand, learn that their mother died 2 years ago. They are having difficulty processing the information and decide to go home and rest first, while the rest of the world is going insane. The family settles into their new home. Simultaneously, scientists begin examining the plane but discover nothing unusual. Michaela is concerned because her fiancé, Jared, did not arrive at the airport to greet her. When she arrives at work to meet him, she is greeted by a senior detective, despite the fact that she has been missing for 5 years. He welcomes her return to the job. Aside from the return of Flight 828, there has also been news of 2 girls being abducted from their backyard. Jared is the case's lead detective and is extremely busy. When Michaela meets him, she discovers that this isn't the only reason he didn't come to meet her. He married her best friend, Lourdes, last year. It turns out, Michaela is taken aback because it has only been 2 days since she and Jared got engaged. When Ben returns home, the first thing he does is take Cal to the doctor. Researchers have discovered a way to treat his leukemia, which means he could live for more than 6 months. The couple couldn't believe what they were hearing. Meanwhile, Michaela is riding the bus home when she hears a voice instructing the driver to slow down. The voice is so powerful that she yells at the driver and saves the life of a child just as the bus is about to hit him. Then we're introduced to Savi, a medical researcher. She was also on Flight 828, returning to her workplace after a 5-year absence. Her research, which she submitted just before her disappearance, has been used for the past 2 years and has cured cancer. Her coworkers surprise her with a welcome back party. Michaela goes for a run the next morning and comes across 2 dogs barking at her from behind a gate. For the second time, she hears the calling in her head. This time, the voice begs her to release them. She pauses for a moment before continuing to jog. The hours pass and the light fades, but the voice remains. Michaela returns to the dogs at midnight and is soon joined by Ben. He, too, had heard the same call as she had. They break open the door and release the dogs, but they decide not to tell anyone about the phone calls, because the entire world is watching them. If they say something strange, people may want to experiment on them. The police discover security footage of the incident the next day. Jared maintains a low profile in order to keep Michaela out of trouble. He asks her why she let the dogs run free, but she doesn't have an answer. They find the dogs and apologize to the owner. Meanwhile, Ben attempts to mend his relationship with Olive by attending her football games and staying involved in her life. They decide to take it slowly because Olive had to go to therapy for many years following Cal and Ben's disappearance. As Michaela gets closer to the dogs, she hears the voice again asking her to let them go. Jared speaks to the dog's owner, explaining the situation, but Michaela is distracted by the voice. Out of sheer instinct, she bursts open the door to a room. The two girls who were kidnapped a few days ago are inside. The voice had asked her to free the girls, not the dogs. Jared is stunned, but he doesn't have time to reflect because he needs to apprehend the kidnapper. The police believe Michaela is ready to continue her work because she was able to solve the case immediately upon her return. They let her come to work but assigned her to desk duty for a few days. Ben and his family are playing a board game somewhere else. Grace receives a text message from her boyfriend in which he expresses his love for her. She was in a relationship with a man prior to Ben's return but has yet to tell him. Simultaneously, some passengers on the flight have a mild headache, and something in their hearts tells them to get to the airport as soon as possible. When they arrive, they are surprised to see each other, knowing that they all had the same desire. The plane suddenly explodes into pieces with no apparent cause. When the NSA discovers that 20 passengers were present at the scene, they bring them in for questioning. They all give the same answer: they just felt like going to the airport. They are released after 10 hours of interrogation, but officials continue to monitor them to ensure they are not hiding anything. The next morning at breakfast, Jared hears a specific song playing in his head. Nobody else hears it, which makes him doubt his own sanity. Following the exciting morning, he and Grace accompany Cal to chemo, where they meet Sanvi. They are shocked to learn that she was also in 828 because Cal is being treated as a result of her discovery. In the meantime, Michaela goes to work and meets Lourdes. They used to be best friends, but Michaela can't bring herself to talk to her this time. She is later informed that she must undergo a psychiatric evaluation before returning to work. When Ben hears the same tune again while crossing a signal, he decides to follow it this time. He approaches Rad, a street singer who was also involved in the fight with them. Rad apparently left his 13-year-old son with a neighbor when he first boarded the plane. He has now discovered that his son Adio is in jail, but no one will let him meet him. Rad has summoned him, which means he must assist Rad. He arranges a meeting between Rad and his son through his contacts in the NYPD. Adio has been arrested for stealing from the jewelry store where he works, but he maintains that it was not his fault. The guy could be lying, but Ben has a feeling he's not. Ben tells Michaela at home to keep the phone calls hidden from Grace as well. He doesn't want her to think he's changed from the Ben he was 5 years ago, especially since she has been keeping her distance when they are alone together. Grace receives a phone call the next morning from her boyfriend, who urges her to tell Ben the truth. Michaela overhears her as she describes the situation to him. She promises not to tell Ben, but asks Grace to figure out what she wants to do right away. Later, Michaela investigates Adio's case and discovers that all evidence points to him being the culprit because there is no evidence of forced entry and he obtained the job using a false ID. Red approaches him again, but Adio insists that it wasn't him. He used the forged ID to get better jobs, but he would never steal from the job he worked so hard for. Grace buys new toys for Cal at night because his old ones were donated. He does, however, miss his rock collections and limited edition Legos. Olive had secretly stored them in a storage unit without Grace's knowledge. Ben discovers that the unit belongs to Grace's boyfriend, Danny. When she and Ben go to get the items, Olive embraces him and apologizes. Ben hears the tune again, but this time in real life. Before they can move the boxes, he tracks it down and discovers it is the ringtone of the jewelry store owner's son. He is the one who stole the jewelry and blamed Adio for it. Ben immediately dials 911 and has him arrested. Finally, Adio is set free, and Red is overjoyed. Michaela goes through her Facebook messages from Lourdes over the years. It brings back memories of their friendship. She visits Lourdes and reconciles with her, forgiving her for everything. Ben confronts Grace about her love affair somewhere else. He doesn't blame Grace for seeking solace elsewhere after the loss of her husband and child. Grace is grateful to have a husband who understands her. Following that, we meet Kelly, one of the 828 passengers who has been the most outspoken about what happened to them. She gives interviews and accuses the government of concealing something. Then, while she is watching the news at night, she is assassinated. Her house will be surrounded by cops in a matter of hours. Ben learns about it from the news as well, and warns his family to be wary of strangers because the death could be related to her being a passenger. He receives a call from Sanvi, who informs him that she has discovered an undiscovered protein in Cal's blood that was not present prior to his return. They decide to keep it a secret until she conducts additional research to determine what it is. Michaela and Ben go to Kelly's house to investigate the murder after receiving the call. Vance, however, interrupts them and kicks them out because the matter involving Flight 828 is a matter of national security. Outside, they meet Kelly's husband, Taylor, who says his wife received a call the day before. He walks away before they question him further. Michaela has also been hearing the phrase "own your truth" in her head a lot. She realizes she is meant to find Kelly's killer after hearing Kelly say the same thing in her interview. Later, she and Ben go to see Taylor, who is getting ready for the funeral. His maid, like him, believes Kelly was murdered as a result of the interviews. The siblings see themselves out when they begin to receive guests. This, however, reminds Michaela of the death of her friend Evie. Michaela was in a car accident with Evie a few months before the flight vanished. Evie was killed in the crash, and Michaela never forgave herself because she was driving. She goes to Evie's parents' house and finds her mother in order to own her truth. Michaela was kicked out the last time she was here because the couple didn't want to see her. Beverly, on the other hand, invites her in. Michaela soon discovers she has dementia and believes her daughter is still alive. Her husband, on the other hand, continues to blame Michaela for Evie's death. Michaela goes to work after the encounter and meets Jared. He did some research on Kelly and discovered she and her husband own a downtown mall. Michaela recalls the maid mentioning a mall while discussing Kelly the day before. That location may hold the answers they seek. The movie ends here.